Okay, hopefully we are live. So this is Tuesday, the 3rd of September. So just myself today. So I'm just going to go over some general conversations really around what we do from a sort of SRT perspective, from a Spirit Release Academy perspective, really, in terms of sort of intrusive symptoms of attachments. So we're going to talk about attachments, the types of attachments, the way that they attach to people, how they attach to people. And then again, we're going to cover the symptoms of attachment because there's a whole host of different symptoms different people have when you've got things attached to you. So we'll kind of go through some of those conversations. Obviously, I'm going to check the comments. So anyone that's got comments or questions, pop those in the comment box, and we'll obviously cover those as well. So as people start to join, again, I'll obviously try to multitask, to talk at the same time that I watch and type and that kind of stuff. So just bear with me from that perspective. So I think from our perspective, Spirit Release Academy, as you all know, or most people realise, was basically was developed on the back of working with Dr. Palmer. So I've been working with Terry basically for probably well over 10 years. So in that time, we've done lots of research and we've covered people that had different symptoms, different problems. Terry was really, really interested in AVH, auditory voice hallucination. So people that were schizophrenic, basically, people that are hearing voices that don't know where they come from. Those people have mental health problems and obviously are affected in quite a negative way. So I'll say hi to Sharon and Gabby that have arrived. Hi folks, good to have you here. So basically, Terry was very keen to try and hook up with someone that was interested in becoming a medium from a spiritual perspective that could talk to the entities that were connected to people that had schizophrenia, that were hearing voices, that kind of thing. And he contacted a whole lot of people all over the world. And I was one of the ones lucky enough to reply to say that I was also working with clients that were hearing voices. And at the time I was working hands-on, one-to-one with people in kind of small garden shed, basically. So people would turn up, I would let Chen in a trance state. Chen would basically put his hands on people. He'd then connect to the energies or the entities that were connected to them and would basically disconnect those attachments. And then the person, sort of after an hour or something, would leap off the couch and generally announce that the voices were gone, or the voices were certainly diminished in terms of the volume level, and they felt better. And then, of course, we would connect to those people from an ongoing perspective and just check on their mental health, how they were feeling, whether the voices had continued or they picked up new voices, or whether they were voice-free. So that was kind of 10 years of work, basically. So I was working in a research capacity with Terry, and we worked on thousands of people. And in the latter part, we kind of worked on 1,000 cases that he actually documented, had video, documented evidence of the progress. He would speak to the parents or the people that were hearing voices, if it was children, and actually catalogue the whole kind of the journey, really, from someone that kind of contacted us that was hearing voices, that had intrusive thoughts, may have been suicidal, which most people just tend to be, that have the kind of worst aspects of schizophrenia, psychosis or psychotic, and self-harming, that kind of thing. So these were the kind of cases that kind of Terry worked through and progressed, if you like. So from my perspective, obviously I was the medium that was connecting to the person's energy, and then I was able to talk to the entities or the energies connected. So quite often people that are hearing voices have discarnate spirit. So people like us that have been alive, that have died, those discarnate spirit don't move across to the spiritual vibration or dimension, or different cultures, different kind of religions have different words, different terminology. The way that I understand it is it's a vibration. So when we die, the spiritual part of us leaves the physical body, and that moves to a different vibration, which we call spirit generally, which is kind of like an overall wording and version of something, effectively. So hi to Marla and Leanne that joined in the comments. Good to see you guys. So that's kind of my understanding, is that when someone dies, basically that spiritual intelligence moves to this different frequency that we call spirit or heaven or different things. And obviously in that frequency are all of these energies that we can connect to telepathically. So if you're a medium and you have telepathy online, so like myself, Jono, obviously other mediums, then we're able to discern between good and bad spirits, and we're able to contact and connect to any spiritual intelligence that we can talk to. And the way that we do that effectively is I'll just put myself in a kind of protected space, change my vibration. I've been doing it for 20 years, so I just think with my intention that I either want to connect to someone, or if there's a discarnate spirit in my area, could be in the house, could be sat next to you. If you're in a hospital, you start to hear voices. So if you open yourself energetically as a medium, you're going to start to hear voices. And of course, you can have protracted and prolonged conversation with those voices because they're going to be speaking to you. And some of those discarnate spirits are going to be good, and some of them probably not so good. And I think that's one of the things that I learned as a medium over the course of my kind of last 20 years, really, is that people that weren't very nice when they were here physically generally still aren't very nice in spirit. So the personality seems to carry forward. So if you're a nasty person in the physical life and you die, your vibration transitions into that spiritual frequency, but the actual conscious energy of that spirit is still there. So the personality is still there. I was going to say hi to Kat, who's joined us from Australia, sunny coast Australia, whilst it's damp, cold and wet in the UK, of course, because it's summer. So thanks for joining, Kat. Good to see you. So I think from that perspective, that was one of the things that I found interesting, is that, you know, we have this concept that people that are nice tend to be nice when they're dead, if we speak to them from a mediumistic perspective. People that aren't so nice generally aren't so nice when they've passed over. So that spiritual energy seems to stay the same from a conscious perspective, really. Say hi to Ruth, who's joined, and Adriana. Hi guys, thanks for joining. I'm just basically going through and talking to myself effectively about discarnate spirit and how we kind of, as mediums, understand the personality. So we can talk to anyone. Wayne's just joined, and Louisa as well. Hi Louisa, good to have you guys here. So yeah, so that's the thing. As a medium, we can talk to any discarnate spirit really quickly, really easily. And of course, it can be a bit of a curse to a certain degree for many mediums, because when you open yourselves up, obviously there's lots of discarnate spirit that are kind of queuing to talk to you. And this is what we see with stage mediums. If you stand on the stage and you have an audience of a few hundred people or a few thousand people, then you obviously have this kind of line forming behind you, really, of discarnate spirits. So people that are now dead, that were once alive, and they really want to get that message through to their loved ones. They want their daughter, their son, their parents to know they're still alive in some other form, but the consciousness or the energy is still there. The personality is still there. They're watching what you're doing. They want to generally give you a message and say, you know, I saw when you did so-and-so, or if you look in my bedroom, you can see a cup, or that white feather was me, or the knocking sound that you're hearing, that was me. So again, from a medium perspective, we need to be quite clear about our boundaries, because otherwise you can get overawed with this line in spirit that want to come through and pass messages. And I've had it recently myself. My mother and father passed away in the last couple of years, and also my aunties passed away, and all three of them come back within a couple of weeks, and they're busy talking and they're, you know, passing information. So I kind of, you know, validate the fact that obviously there is life after death, effectively. And then, of course, so that's the discarnate spirit perspective. So we've got these discarnate spirits that are around us all. You know, they're there providing reassurance, guidance sometimes, but sometimes they're negative. And of course, from an SRA perspective, and certainly from a spirit release therapy perspective, it's the negative ones that we're dealing with. So these are the ones that we're disconnecting from people, we're removing from people's etheric field, which tends to stop the voices, stops the intrusive thoughts, self-harming, intrusive aspects of that, and obviously suicidal concepts as well. So this is where SRT is really, really powerful, because of course, if you have people that have a broken etheric field and they have discarnate spirit connected to them, and of course negative entities, then those entities and discarnate spirits continually push this negative intrusive thought, which you can't stop. So if you're a medium, we know how to turn it on and how to turn it off. And obviously, before I talk to anything, as all mediums will know, you know, the first thing we do is we question the authenticity of the person that you're speaking to. So I would ask any voice that I hear, are you from the highest light, 3 times before I even engage in any conversation. So even if it's my mum and dad, or my auntie came through a little while back, and she was trying to pass a message through to her daughter, so my cousin basically. And I said to her, look, I'm sorry, I can't do that because, she hasn't, your daughter would like to know you're okay and you're safe and you're okay in spirit and you're watching what she's up to, but it's not the right thing to do from a kind of ethical perspective from a medium because it carries responsibility. And that person's going through a grieving period and they're trying to grieve the loss of their loved one. And the last thing you want is some medium to pop up and say, oh, I've been speaking to your mum or your dad or your brother or sister or your son or your daughter, and this is what they're saying, because that doesn't really help the grieving process and generally causes more problems than not. So most mediums don't tend to do that. But again, if I hear a voice, I'll question it 3 times. Are you from the highest light? And I expect to get a yes, yes, yes. And if I get 3 yeses, I know that this is a positive energy that I'm talking to. It's a positive discarnate spirit. So it's here with positive intention. It doesn't have a negative low vibration. So I will probably enter into a quick conversation. What do you want? What are you here for? Why are you connecting to me? That kind of thing. And then generally, I could close it down. Sorry, can't help. Or, yep, I'll do X, Y, or Z. Or if we're working with clients, then potentially I might pass a message through if I deem that to be suitable and the right sort of information. So again, mediums have a responsibility to kind of discern the information that they pick up from a spiritual perspective. So of course, on the next side of the coin, other people that are schizophrenic, hearing voices, negative intrusions, generally, especially those in the kind of the worst areas, those that are suicidal, self-harming, generally have an entity attached as well. So we've got discarnate spirit, people that used to be physical like us, and then we have other things that we see in all of our films, we see in horror films, we see depicted on churches and religious buildings and stuff all around the world, and the pyramids have pictures of these things. So there are entities that kind of exist in a different frequency of vibration. Again, they're telepathic, we can talk to them. We can, again, discern some of these entities are positive, some are negative. So from a kind of SRA and SRT perspective, the way that we work with our mediums is to learn and teach them, again, to question the voice. You connect to a client, you have an entity connected, are you from the highest light 3 times? So you normally get yes, yes, no. So 9 times out of 10, they'll tell you they are from the highest light and they are from the highest light. And then the universal law comes in and they have to tell you the truth on the 3rd test, which is generally, no, I'm not. And we go, okay, that's cool, because we would know from a mediumistic perspective, now we're dealing with something negative that has negative intention, low vibration. This is what's connected to the client, basically. So again, the way that I used to work with Terry is I would then talk to that entity. We would enter into dialogue and conversation. I'd ask it where it was from, which star system or planet or galaxy it come from, what species it was. Is it arachnoid? Is it reptilian? Is it Pleiadian? There's a whole myriad of different species of entities we can talk about and talk to. But again, when you're talking to something negative, it became very apparent to me and Terry at the time in research that they're only ever going to lie to you. They're never going to tell you the truth because they're negative. So there's only a certain amount of information that is credible, really, from a medium perspective when you're talking to negative entities. And the rest of it you need to throw away because, of course, they're not going to tell you the truth. And they have their own agenda, generally. And one of their agenda is obviously to move the person that they're connected to into a very negative space, to encourage self-harm, to encourage self-doubt, negative thoughts, tell them that they're hated, that people don't like them. So it's this continual negativity that they're pushing on that person. And that person then becomes very negative, obviously anxious, depressed, psychotic, suicidal. All of the negative things start to happen. And of course, they're hearing voices continually. So that really, from my perspective, is a big problem, because obviously that is a spiritual problem that can only be dealt with, in my or our opinion, from a spiritual perspective. I'm just going to say hello to Jennifer, Adam, and Jamie that have joined. Thanks for joining, folks. Hopefully you're enjoying the general chat. So we're just going through basically what Spirit Release Academy do, how we define negative intrusions, entities, discarnate spirits, and how we kind of teach our practitioners to clear them effectively. So entities are an interesting topic, and I found it really, really interesting, so much so that I spent years and years talking to some very negative entities about some interesting things. But of course, again, it's kind of one-way trip to a certain degree, because you're never going to get anything particularly positive when you're dealing with negative entities. So as part of the research that myself, Terry were doing, and obviously John and people came online, we realised, and Chen was basically the guide that was working, teaching Terry how to do these things. Chen was the one from behind the scenes that was basically coming up with what we need to look at from a vibratory perspective to clear people's etheric fields and disconnect these entities. And it became pretty apparent that whilst I, as a medium, and Terry, as a facilitator, could disconnect entities from people, and there are many people that do SRT, or many healers or mediums that do this themselves, what we realised was a lot of the very low vibrating negative ones, especially ones that are connected to people that are encouraging suicide, aren't going to be disconnected by a medium or anyone else asking them to disconnect. It does need a forceful disconnection, and that needs to come from a spiritual entity, which of course Chen, White Hawk and the guide team do. So Chen has a team that he's built in spirit over the last 10 years really, of himself. Lots of people that were human. Terry's obviously part of that team, and he's watching what goes on from a day-to-day basis. But there are lots of interdimensional entities that are positive that work with Chen and the team, and they're the ones that come into the client's etheric field and basically find whatever's connected that has a low vibration and it's negative, and they do that disconnection. Just going to say hi to Michelle, who's joined, and Jamie, if I didn't cover Jamie, thanks for joining, folks. So this is the way that we work now from an SRA perspective. It was a lot safer to use the guides and the spiritual team to do the intervention than it was for the mediums to do it. So when I used to do the intervention myself, you'd be attacked by entities continually, basically. So psychic attacks range from headaches, migraines, pains in different parts of your body, things generally becoming quite chaotic in your life and going wrong, and then your family are attacked as well, generally. So as a medium doing this work, it wasn't a very good idea to be face-to-face with negative entities. It was a much better idea to invoke the guides and the spiritual team that kind of sat there at the back. They do the intervention, they clear the field, and then we're just talking to the guide. So this is like a third-party way of working from our perspective, the way that we perform spirit relief therapy. And it works really well, because if you follow the process and you follow the protocol, which basically took 10 years to kind of bring together, and has now been used on thousands of cases, we know it works. If you follow the protocol letter by letter and you stay in line, or in your swim lane, as we say, then 9 times out of 10, there are no problems. And again, all of the practitioners that we're training on a kind of week-by-week basis are finding the same things. That once they know how to do it and they've learnt the technique and they're connected to the guides behind the scenes, they're working in pairs of 2. So a facilitator who is generally coming from some type of holistic practitioner basis, and then a spiritual medium. So medium is obviously talking to the guide team. The facilitator basically runs the show and actually runs the session, is actually responsible for kind of taking the medium and protecting the medium whilst they're in trance, because many of the mediums that we work with work in trance. I tend not to now, but I did used to work in full trance with Terry. So I would go into trance, Chen would come in, Terry would be conversing with Chen, they would have a chat, do the work, and then obviously I'd come back with no idea what happened in the last hour and another hour of your life that you've lost effectively. So again, quite a few of the mediums like Ruth and Dave and people do work in full trance. So from a kind of intrusive perspective, again, people that have attachments, so the worst, most negative attachments are going to be intrusive voices, intrusive thoughts, suicidal thoughts, those sorts of things, self-harm. So if you've got things that are attached to your field that probably aren't entity-based, so maybe just discarnate spirit, maybe interdimensional parasites are another thing that we find quite often in people's field. So these are kind of a liken almost to a flea or a tick, really. So if you can kind of visualize, a dog with a couple of ticks on its back, the dog wouldn't know the ticks are there, particularly the ticks are going to suck in the blood, which is their substance. They're living on the back of the blood from the dog. But effectively, if you had thousands of ticks on a dog, then the dog is going to notice that it's got no energy, it's tired, a lot of the blood is being assimilated into the ticks. And if the ticks continued and continued, eventually you wouldn't see the dog, you just see almost like a beehive of ticks, basically. So interdimensional parasites we see in the same way. We see parasites that are connected to people's etheric fields, generally almost like a swarm of negativity that are very easy to clear from our perspective, and the guides clear them in seconds generally. But again, they do cause fatigue. They don't really do anything other than bring energetic layers down. So interdimensional parasites are basically another thing that we're kind of looking for when we start to look for intrusion into the etheric field. So hopefully that kind of explains that aspect of it. Other things we talk about, so we look for portals. So people, especially people that have worked with occult things, maybe in past lives as well, have interdimensional portals that are opened up in their field. So we see this a lot with dementia patients, and specifically people that have mental health problems, that kind of thing, or people that have done lots of drugs, certainly hard drugs, heroin, cocaine. Some of those things break down the etheric field and protection, and this can kind of give rise to entity attachments, and they will create portals in that person's field. And a portal can be thought of as a doorway, basically, almost like you kind of see on Monsters Inc. If you've ever seen Monsters Inc., where you've got a doorway that opens, the child goes to bed, the monster kind of opens the door, comes in, terrorizes the child whilst it's asleep, and then disappears out the doorway. The portals are kind of the same, so other energies can come and go from portals, and people that have dementia and some of those problems, we see portals in their etheric field. So we need the guides to close those portals to stop other energies coming and going inside the person. And the way that you would see that is quite often people with dementia seem to change personality minute by minute, really. So you could be talking to them, I've seen it myself lots of times. Sometimes their eyes change colour and go black. Sometimes they become quite mean and spiteful and quite negative. So you can take an old lady like a grandmother that was very loving and positive, and suddenly during a conversation or partway through a conversation, she becomes really negative. And you think, wow, what's going to happen there? But that is a sign of possession, really, spiritual possession, probably an energy coming through a portal into that person, changing the personality. And then, of course, it disappears again. And then you get the old positive lady come back. So lots of old people have portals in their field, and this is where these other entities come and go from, basically. And then we'll kind of move on to other intrusive things that we would see in a field from a kind of SRA perspective, and certainly dealt with with the spirit release therapy process and protocol, is cursing. So cursing is kind of big, really. I never realized how big cursing was. I remember back in the day, Terry and I talking about things that we were looking at with people's etheric field. And I used to say to them, I can see this stream of energy coming in from the right-hand side as I would view a person. So I would bring a person up in my mind, facing me right and left. And I'd see quite often these streams of energy coming in from the right that Chen, my guide, would be showing me. And I'd say to him, what is that? And he said, I don't know. It's just a stream of negative energy coming in that's hitting the etheric field continually. And most of it is kind of bouncing off. But as that person becomes a bit more tired, a bit more fatigued, it starts to have a bit of an effect on how they feel, their mental health, and also their physicality. So in the end, like Chen came to the concept, this was cursing. So this is someone, probably generally family related, actually, for most people, someone in your family that is sending you negativity, which could just be bad thought. So thinking about you in a negative way, you're doing really well in life and you've got a good job, perfect family, everything's kind of hunky-dory. Someone else is struggling in your family and they kind of look at you and think that you're lucky. That's kind of sending you like a blast of negative energy that's going to hit your etheric field and effectively kind of bounce off. But of course, if they continually keep thinking about you and speaking about you negatively, then that energy will start to erode your etheric protection, and it will start to have an effect on your thought process and how you feel generally. So I'm just going to say hello to Jennifer, Kat, and Leanne, who are asking some questions, which is good. Alzheimer's patients. Yes, Jennifer. So yeah, if you've worked with old people, especially Alzheimer's, people with dementia, you will definitely see personality changing going on. And when we scan them from an SRT perspective, we see portals and we see quite often other discarnate spirits attached, which is where this personality thing starts to happen. And you basically, you're watching kind of possession, really. Spiritual possession. Sometimes it's positive possession, because of course there are positive spirits that will try and come through and get their message across to whoever they're talking to. generally it's negative possession, and they're normally negative people that are wanting to talk to that person. And again, caregivers at the front face of that, really. So if you're working with a patient that has Alzheimer's or dementia, and you're talking to them, you're talking to a discarnate spirit that's in there, taken over the host and effectively using it in a possessed way to kind of verbally speak to you, I guess. So going back to curses. So again, from a cursing perspective, Mara's asking what would show up as a curse in SRT sessions. Yeah, so I was just going to get to that bit, really. So when we basically speak to the guide, we ask the guides during the SRT session, is there energy coming in basically into that field in the form of a curse? And again, the guides then go and have a look at the etheric field of the client. So they'll scan the whole field. So if you can visualize a person, the way that I kind of visualize it is I see a kind of stick person in my mind. That's the client, so I connect to their energy, and then I would look around the outside, and Chen will show me like a blast of different lines coming in if it's from the right. So if I saw 5 lines of energy coming in from the right, that to me would mean current active curses coming in, so 5 of them, from 5 separate people that are alive. So if I saw curse coming in or energy coming into that image in my mind from the left-hand side, for me, that's ancestral cursing. So this is energy coming in from past lives or coming down that ancestral line, basically. And again, the way that we deal with it is the medium's talking to the guides, we're asking where it came from. Obviously, we could find out who's sending it, because of course, it's an energy, so it has a vibration. So again, in the old days when I used to work clearing people with terror, we used to hook into the vibration of a curse. So Chen would lock into the frequency, because we all have our own unique frequency. So he would lock into the person's frequency that's sending it, and he would track it back, basically. And then he'd show me a picture in my mind of a face, and that would be the perpetrator. So quite often I would see the face of somebody in my mind. I think this is the person that's sending that curse. And then, of course, when I was working with clients in a way that I used to, I don't know, but I used to be working with them one-to-one in person, I would basically describe the person's face that I could see. And quite often they would go, okay, yeah, it's my granddad, or it's my mum, or it's my sister. Quite often it's family members that are sending these curses. And again, sometimes they're doing it just without realizing they're doing it. So a subconscious way. Other times, of course, it is conscious. And then certainly with cursing, and I think it's become quite prevalent these days, because we've got lots of films and lots of Hollywood movies and stuff that kind of are connected with occults. We look at Harry Potter and some Lord of the Rings and some of these films that are magical, mystical, and you can kind of see wizards and witches and people are kind of sending energy using occult practice, occult symbology. So there's a whole kind of, we could just spend today talking about cursing, occult imagery, pentagrams, symbology, that kind of thing. But the general concept is, some people are sending energy because they're very mad and angry with someone, and that is effectively a curse, or people are actually orchestrating occult curses. So again, people that are into witchcraft or black magic or the occult will actually do some sort of ritual involving different things generally, but they then effectively focus their attention and they focus that negative energy on a person that's the target, and that energy gets sent through the ether and hits your etheric field and continues to hit your etheric field day in, day out, day in, day out, until it starts to have an impact. And I've seen people that are working in an occult manner, cursing people, clients that I've been working with to try and protect and look after. Some of this is very nasty. And of course, the other side of it is, if you actually understand how to do this from an occult perspective, then you'd invoke an entity. So people then not only now doing a ritual, the ritual involves connecting to a negative entity. So they're calling forward an entity, a different species generally, that's going to connect with them and work with them. And that entity has a job of basically going to find the target, so straight into your etheric field, and they kind of spend their time around the outside of you with a view to basically creating some type of negativity in your life. So this is where curses, people talk about, I've been cursed, I've had loads of bad luck, everything goes wrong in my life, everything I do goes wrong, my white goods go wrong, things break continually. electronics break around me. That kind of, again, would be symptoms from our perspective, from an SRT perspective, of someone that's been cursed with occult practitioners that are invoking entities. So the entities are around your space continually, and they're the ones that are trying to create some sort of chaos in your life. So as an example, if you're driving down the road and you're merrily singing to yourself, you've got your music on, everyone's happy, and next thing you know, someone pulls out right in front of you, and you think, wow, that was really bad driving. So it creates a bit of negativity in you, a bit of anger, a bit of rage possibly, and then you get into an altercation with another driver. That is kind of, quite often that's being done by other entities that are basically, because the other entities are connecting to the other driver, and they're suggesting to them, yeah, pull out. So they have a thought that comes in, just pull out in front of this person. So they pull out right in front of your path. And I'm sure lots of accidents and things happen because of that type of thing. And again, cursing can be behind that, really. So from our perspective, the whole kind of cursing concept is very big. But the way that we deal with it from an SRT perspective is the medium's going to talk to the guide continually. The guide's going to scan the field of the client, find that level and frequency of vibration that comes in that's negative, and then basically protect, shield, and kind of reflect that energy back away. So again, the way that we deal with it, there's different ways of doing things. There's lots of occult practitioners that get involved in a kind of duel, really, almost like a battle, which I've done in the past, which doesn't really end well for the medium generally. So we don't do that anymore. So we don't kind of go to war with entities because it's not a good idea. The best way to do it, we find, is the guide protects the client, to put them in a protective bubble, almost, if you visualize that. And then this stream of energy that's coming in hits the bubble, and it's reflected back to the same vibratory frequency that it's coming from. So we're basically sending the energy back to the person, is one way of doing it. Or another way of doing it is that we send the energy back into the planet and we kind of transmute it in that way. So we can't kind of stop or clear the energy, but we can change the frequency. We can transmute it or we send it back. So I found, for me personally, works really well. If we reflect it back to the perpetrator, the person that's sending it, they get their own energy back as a huge big blast of negativity, and generally they stop pretty quick. And I found that to be a really good method of stopping people that are continually cursing. Other practitioners may not choose to do that. They may choose to transmute it down through the earth. I personally find that works for some people, but if you've got someone in your family or someone that you know, or someone that's into a cult that's hell-bent on cursing you and sending you negativity, if you transmute it away, they continue to send, and it doesn't really stop. So there's kind of a couple of fields of thought, really. So I think just going to go to some of the questions. So, hi Erin, she's joined as well, which is good. Andrea, the man who cursed me centuries ago appeared during meditation earlier this year. Oh, okay, yeah, and this is the thing, is that if you go into meditation, quite often you'll see the energy of the vibration of the person that's cursing you. So quite often, again, if we're working with a client one-to-one, we take them into a quick meditation and say, just bring up a picture of you. Let's look at your field. What can you see? Just literally look at your third eye and just open yourself, almost like a blank picture, and just tell me what you see. And quite often they'll say, oh, I'm seeing my mum, or I'm seeing my granddad, or I'm seeing my boss at work, or someone. And then we can kind of connect to that energy and see if that is positive or negative. And more often than not, it's negative. So you kind of know that you're being cursed by that person. So the only problem really is, again, from an SRT perspective, is when you, as a medium, have the information as to who's cursing someone. I found personally that if we give that information back to the client that's booked you, they now know that their mother or their grandmother or grandfather or boss has cursed them, and it kind of makes it worse. So they're now really angry and negative towards that person, and the whole thing energetically kind of moves in a very sort of negative way. But if we just clear the energy and we just say, yep, you had 2 curses, they're cleared. They don't know where they came from and who cursed them. They probably can guess. Most people can kind of guess, really. Or I think, as Andrea says, if you do a meditation, you'll definitely connect to the vibration and the frequency. So you'll kind of see that person or know intuitively who it is anyway. So most people that have been cursed generally know where it's coming from. They just don't know how to clear it and how to keep it away. And that's the part that we're working through in an SRT session, basically. So once once we've kind of cleared that energy and that curse, the client's put in a protective bubble, and then we kind of move on to the next thing. So we're talking, just going to go to some of the questions here. What if you don't know who cursed you? That's a good question, Jessica, actually, because of course there are people that have been cursed that don't know they've been cursed. Generally, most people that are being cursed know who it's from, because if I was going to curse you, Jessica, if I send you a blast of negative energy and you don't know it's from me, you kind of don't know it's happened. So most people have had an altercation of some description with somebody else. Again, if it's a family member, you're doing really well, good job, etc. Your sister's not, so she's got a bit of negativity towards you, and then you get some good grades, or you've passed an exam or something. So again, you kind of know people around you don't feel very positive to the fact that you're doing well, or your life's quite good, or positive things are happening. So most people have got an idea as to who's cursing them. And certainly, as Andrea says, if you go into meditation and just basically connect yourself, do your clearing, your grounding, bring up a kind of white screen in your mind and just ask for a picture to appear in that screen, your guides will show you a picture basically of who has or is cursing you generally. And that's the way that I used to kind of work. And again, if you're a medium, we can track the energy back to the person anyway, so it's kind of easy to do. And I was also quite surprised with cursing that lots of corporate cursing is going on behind the scenes. So there's lots of companies, some big companies actually, that are employing occult practitioners in one way or another to basically curse their opponents or their competitors. So we've worked for some quite big company names that you would recognise. Some big companies that are out there across the world who realise that they have people sending them negative energy and they're cursing the brand, and they want the brand cleared and protected. So this kind of extrapolates into a much bigger space, really. And of course, if you're running a company and you're doing quite well and you have competitors, one of the ways, obviously, you can keep the competitors at bay is to employ occult practitioners to curse them and keep them in a negative space, keep them having problems, keep them having R&D problems or development problems. And again, there's lots of people that on the internet, I'm sure you can find, that basically offer their services as paid kind of again, occult practitioners that perform cursing or witchcraft or voodoo or black magic on whoever you pay them to do. So again, we've sort of connected with clients that have told us they spent thousands of dollars trying to protect themselves from people cursing them. And there's quite a big industry in this whole cursing thing, which I find, very negative, really, that people will connect to you in forums and Facebook, on internet chat rooms, and will tell you that you've been cursed or you've got a curse. Would you like it removed? They'll do it for a few $100s. So people fall, it's a bit like a scam, really. You fall into the trap of going, okay, yeah, if you think I've been cursed, I've had a few things go wrong recently, so I'll pay a few $100s to have it removed. And that then just becomes this cycle that they continually basically harvest you for more and more money, continually telling you you're being cursed, and they're clearing and removing the curses. And very quickly you've run up thousands of dollars of bills from something that's probably either not happening, or the person you're talking to is the person that's cursing you in the first place, basically. So there's a whole industry around kind of black magic, voodoo, cursing. And again, from our perspective, from an SRI perspective, we find it very quick and easy to work with the guides and to clear that energy and just basically negate it or reflect it back to the proponent, if you like. Okay, I'm just going to go to some of the comments, just have a quick look. So what are some of the things, I think it was Connie, what are some of the things that track level 2 entities? So again, we kind of class entities in 3 ways, and this was part of the research for Terry, really. So when I was working with him, we were seeing all these different entities, and we didn't really know how to kind of classify them. They were just negative entities. So in the end, Chen said, let's work on the vibration levels. So level 1 is a very low vibration entity, but it's quite small. We see them as kind of gargoyle type creatures, like the ones you see on tops of churches and monasteries and cathedrals, that kind of thing. So these just kind of sit in your field. They're a bit of a pain because it's intrusive thought. So they put intrusive thoughts in your mind, but they're very easy to clear from our perspective. So again, most things that attract entities, everything is vibration, everything is frequency. So if you're vibrating at a very high frequency, so generally you've got a good diet, your nutrition's good, drinking water, clearing yourself, that kind of thing. Not doing drugs, so no cocaine, no heroin for the weekend, that kind of stuff. So your vibration's high. So if you've got a high vibration, the way that Chen showed me this years ago was to show me the roundabout that we used to play on when we were kids. So you would sort of spin the roundabout in a play park, and then you try and jump on, basically, and then people would push it faster and faster, and that roundabout would keep going around faster and faster, and eventually it would go so fast you couldn't jump on, and if you did, you'd just get flung back off again. And then some of the people on the roundabout would end up being flung off if you weren't kind of holding on for dear life. So this is the same concept. If you're vibrating at this really high frequency, negative entities can't really attach to you. They can try, but they won't be able to stay connected. So the goal for all of us really is to have our sort of spiritual protection in place and to be vibrating at a frequency that kind of puts us away from anything that's negative. So things that attract entities are low vibration. So if you're watching horror films, you're in a state of fear. You've got adrenaline pumping through your system. Horror films are designed to create fear, but of course the human psychology, really, we don't know the difference between a film and reality. So when we watch a horror film, our body goes into fight or flight mode. So we're about to be killed by something really negative, or there's a really negative thing happening. So we kind of go into fear. So we've got adrenaline in our system, and our vibration is fear-based because we're in a state of emotional fear. So our vibration is low. So of course we're going to attract the same frequency in. So if we sit in a cinema with loads of other people and we're watching a horror film, that's kind of going to bring in entities are going to look and go, oh, whatever's happening over there, because they're not going to see a cinema and they're not going to see a horror film. They're going to see a group of humans that are sat together in the same physical space that are vibrating at a very low frequency, and they're very fear-based. So that's going to attract them into your space and potentially connect to you, because they're going to want to feed off your energy, because that's what they do. They need to connect to our energy field to feed off us. So it's kind of a very simple concept that, we are basically kind of this energy source. And if we're vibrating at a high frequency and we're in a clear mental state and we have clarity of thought, then everything's positive and it's all good. If we're in a fear-based negative state and we're vibrating at low frequency, we're attracting negative things to us. So of course, if we do drugs, cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, all those things, again, we'll either be fear-based or we kind of lose control of our own mental state and we start to hallucinate. So again, if you start to hallucinate, spiritually, we've kind of that spiritual intelligence that's inside us that's normally locked into our physicality, and we're kind of conscious that we're here and we're talking now. That part's disappeared and disconnected. So we're hallucinating, therefore we've lost the kind of boundary of our psychology in a conscious way. And other entities then can basically talk to us because we become telepathic, the same as when we die. So entities then think, okay, yeah, there's Andy, look, he's just taken some hallucinogenic drug, LSD, or any of the other things that cause hallucinations, and medical drugs, of course, as well. So I can talk to him now. So they'll come along and say, hi, I'm Jesus or Mary Magdalene or some other deity, I'm the Buddha, basically. Can you give me permission to connect and talk to you? And of course, whilst we're in this huge, massive high and hallucinating, we go, yeah, hi, Buddha, I'd love to speak to you. So you've just given your permission now to an entity to connect to you. So when you come off that drug and you come down and you come back into your body, you've probably got a kind of hitchhiker, as we like to call them in the SRA world. You've picked up something that's generally negative. You've given permission to connect to you. And that entity or that discarnate spirit is now going to kind of go with you wherever you go. It's going to feed off your energy. It's going to start to create intrusive thoughts. So you're going to start to have odd thoughts and stuff. And of course, that only goes in one place, really. So that's the answer, really, to the question that came in from, I think she's just gone off my screen, Colin. So it was a really good question. So what attracts not just level 2s, but any entity? It's all about vibration. So the key is we want to be consciously in this high vibrating state that things can't kind of connect to us, basically. And obviously telepathically, we can still have conversations with negative things. As I said, as a medium, that's what we do if we want to, but we're electing to talk to them and we know the negative, which of course is the key, really. So I'm just going to go to a few more questions. Wouldn't a negative blast be a psychic attack? Yeah, so basically, Aaron, you're right. So that would be the same concept. So psychic attack is the kind of word for a spiritual attack, I guess, of energy coming into your field. So again, occult practitioners can send blasts of negative energy to someone. People, if you look at kind of voodoo and black magic and things, people use dolls and things to represent someone. So they hold a doll up and they think about, this doll represents Andy effectively, so this is now kind of trying to connect to my energy. So if I take a needle and stick it in the doll's eye, effectively that's going to go in my eye, and then I get pain in my eye because, of course, that's being translated. So if we're not in our protected bubble, our protected space, psychic attacks are really going to kind of be effective to you. And I've had more psychic attacks even my time than I can remember, and they're all painful generally. And most mediums will tell you when they get attacked psychically, it's not a great event. And of course, it happens generally at night as well, so especially when we're asleep, because obviously our protection's down. Occult practitioners can send curses and things, and obviously can send psychic attacks to you as well. So bedtime and sleep time is the time that everyone needs to be thinking about being in their protected space. And it's just a thought. It's just visualize yourself in a little protected bubble. Every night I go to bed, I normally have a quick chat with Chen, just say, right, I'm off to sleep. Can you watch my back, basically? Can you keep the room protected? Can you keep me protected and the rest of the family? So kind of putting that thought out to work with the guides, because they continually want this conversation from us. So it's not just a case of, for the rest of my life, Chen, can you just look after me and protect me, and then we don't have any more conversation. It's kind of not how it works. So we need to be continually talking to the guides, asking them, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you find me a parking space? Is one that I use quite a bit. So when we go off driving somewhere, I always say to Chen, can you go ahead and find us a space, basically? So we go to a place with lots of cars and lots of car parks, and there's big queues. And as we drive around, someone always, 99% of the time, someone will pull out and we can just drive straight in. So this, working with the spirit teams, really becomes part of your sort of day-to-day life. And it's good. It's quite good fun because you actually see it work, which makes it manifest in a really positive way in your life. Okay, so let's go to a few more questions. So past life curses and karma, can you clear those? So yeah, so answering Jamie's question. So curse is just energy, really. So again, the way that I would see curse is if it's a current active curse from someone human and physical alive, I see that coming in from the right. If it's an ancestral old curse that is family related, coming down the family lineage, Shen shows me that to my left. So as I'm visualizing a person, if I see a stream of energy coming in from the left, I know that this is an old ancestral curse, not a current active one from a physical human being. And of course, Chen's job then is to trace the energy of that curse back to where it came from and to basically cap it off and to clear it. Again, the same sort of way to clear and protect, really, or clear and reflect effectively. But ancestral curses obviously are easier to clear from our perspective. Well, when I say ours, obviously the guides are doing the work, but from an SRT perspective, then they're easy to clear because they're not active. So you don't have someone who's actively sending you things. This is old energy that's stagnant and stale, that's coming down the family lineage and connecting. So each person that's born in your family, as they're born into physicality, they have that energy, that old, stale, ancestral, cursed energy connected to their field. So effectively, they're born and they grow up, and they've got this old, stale energy that's continually sort of nibbling at their energy. So that's what I tend to see as an ancestral curse that's coming down the family line. And again, we see this with different cultures, different religions. There are lots of cursing done to people from an ancestral perspective that they want to follow the family lines. So again, it's the same concept to clear it, really, and we don't particularly have any problems with it. But again, it's part of the SRT protocol to clear all curses, whether they're ancestral or active, effectively. Okay, so karmic debts. So we're talking karmic debts. So again, karmic debts kind of comes under contracts, I guess, vows, incantations, I think Lawrence has mentioned, which is really good. So again, all of those things, again, we get right back to the case that everything is vibration, everything is energy. So karmic debts from past, you killed somebody in a past life, so you incarnate into this life, and generally we're incarnating into our soul groups. So people in your families or people in your circle or people in your friendships, close friendships, you should feel like you know some of them from past lives, because all of us have people around us that we've kind of reincarnated with. And some of those people we obviously have karma with. We may have done something negative to them in a past life that we're trying to fix and replay. There's plenty of scenarios and events I've taken people through in past life regression, because past life regression is a really good way to kind of see that, the karmic aspect. So if I take someone through a past life regression, and in that regression they kind of see, they're part of a family, and they did something, or something they did cause someone to die, or they were a soldier and killed someone, and then we kind of look at that past life, and they recognize and say, oh, that's interesting. That soldier that I just killed was a bloke, but in this life, I've got a sister, and it feels like she's the same energy. The sister is the guy from the past life that I killed, who's incarnated into my family now, and she's my sister. And that you will then feel very protective over her, almost as though you've got to repay the karmic debt. So your job in this life is you're going to look after her, you're going to protect her, you're going to love and nourish her, basically, as your kind of sister, because in a past life, she was an opponent to you that you killed. So there's quite a lot of these things going on for all of us. We all have this going on all the time. And the way to access that is past life regression generally. So again, if you do a past life guided meditation, you can set the intention to say, my friend Jono, who I connect with, that I feel really connected to in this life, where's that come from? Like, how are we connected? Where were we in a past life, or did we have past life connections? Because I don't feel like I've just met the guy this week. We both feel like we know each other. We definitely know each other from past lives. How was that happening? So when I met Jono, we both had that feeling. We both kind of knew each other. We didn't really connect initially. I was doing a workshop. Jono had come to the workshop and was talking to Terry. So we didn't really particularly connect in that way. But we both kind of had the feeling that I know you, basically. I know your energy, definitely know you. And then I remember doing, again, a past life regression, talking to Chen, doing a meditation, and I said to him, I want to know who Jono is. So set the intention, let's do a past life regression, show me who Jono is in the past life. And then I was taken to a past life that I had with two people, Jono and another guy. So there were three of us, basically, and we were kind of black sorcerer wizard type people. And we were doing some pretty bad things, generally Earth-related. So we were kind of working for the darker side, doing some pretty nefarious stuff to the Earth, and working with some pretty negative things. And I kind of thought, okay, that really explains lots of things in my life now. It answered for me loads of questions, because I realised, for one, the reason I'm not scared of negative things is clearly because I've worked with negative things in a past life. So they don't frighten me. I don't have a problem talking to them, and I don't have a problem dealing with them, because obviously I have done that in a past life. And the fact that John and I are kind of doing what we're doing now. So when we got together, we basically built SRA, and we're teaching people how to use these SRT techniques to clear negativity and bring people back into a positive place in their life and help them. Totally kind of fell into line. I thought, exactly. So this is me and Jono repaying our karmic debts, probably from that past life that we were doing some pretty naughty things and working with the dark side. And then when I talked to Jono about it, he laughed and said, spot on, that is totally spot on, mate. This is us trying to fix fix the things that we did wrong before, and probably to people as well. Because of course now we're connected with lots of people all over the world, and we're working for them and helping them, and there's lots of people that that we don't really talk about, but there's lots of people that we've helped from suicide, or at the end of their life trying to consider suicide or tried to take their life. By clearing them of the negativity, we're kind of stopping that event. And we've got reams and realms of emails from parents and people saying, you guys, or SRA, or the SRT practitioners, should I say, not just me or Jono, but all of the guys that work in, and the girls, of course, for SRA, this is what everyone's doing every day. It's not really seen. We don't really talk about it. We don't do it from an egotistical perspective at all. But we're saving people's lives every day from the negative things that are attached to them, and the negativity that's going on. So it kind of is a real thing. And again, if you look at what I find quite interesting is when we run these courses, so we've got a course coming up in October. So myself and John are coming to the States, to sort of Ithaca, New York area to teach. But already some of the people that are coming to meet us and be trained have said, this is what I feel like I'm here to do. This is my life calling. I know this is what I'm here to do. I don't know why. I don't know how it works. I haven't done it particularly, but I know that I'm here to do it. And then when we meet these people in person, it's like, yep, I kind of know your energy. I know who you are. So from a past life, you were probably doing the sort of things that we were up to, which was probably a bit negative. So you've incarnated now into this life. And one of the things you've incarnated to do, generally kind of older age, really. So most practitioners we have, I don't think we have any in our 20s. I'm thinking about a few people that are younger, but obviously I'm like 55, John is 55. Most of our practitioners are kind of mid-30s and upwards, really. We don't have any youngsters particularly, but most of us kind of have been through life. Most people have been through some shit and some traumas and things, and they pop out and say, okay, I want to do SRT. This is my calling. This is what I need to do. It's what I'm here to do. I think that's what the interesting thing is that, you know, the people that are doing the work and people that are doing the courses are called to do it, and they know that they're called to do it because it's coming in from probably old karma, and again some of the old things that we've done together. Okay, so just going to have a quick read of some of the comments. So hopefully that explains quite a few things and why we do them, how we do them, and the effects that the clients have, really. So from a kind of client perspective, you know, most clients know they've got problems. They know they've been cursed. They know they're hearing voices. They know they have intrusive thoughts. Anxiety, interestingly, is one of the biggest things that we saw. So when Terry did research and asked clients to kind of tick on a tick list, you know, what are your symptoms? Most people, anxiety was very high up in that list of things, and depression. And that was because they had negative things connected to the field that were causing them anxiety, that gave them that fear of going outside, the fear of doing things. Anxiety generally, we think, and I think the medical industry generally agree, is generally a fear-based expression. And of course, if you've got negative things around you creating fear, then that will cause anxiety. So one of the biggest things that we see, again, and most of the practitioners I think see from our perspective, is that when someone's been cleared using SRT, anxiety just goes. Like you wake up with none, because you don't have that kind of energy around you that's causing those sorts of thoughts and feelings. So anxiety, I think, is probably one of the biggest symptoms that is rectified with SRT. If we're not looking at the kind of the hardcore things of voices, schizophrenia, intrusive thoughts, that kind of thing. So sort of mild or, you know, high level anxiety generally can be coming from this spiritual source. So I was just going to go to some more questions. Jamie's finding it interesting, which is good. I'm glad to hear that, Jamie. Hopefully I'm covering, again, a vast array of things. And I know it's quite quick because we're kind of doing this in an hour effectively, but hopefully we're kind of going through lots of the symptoms of people that an SRT clearing helps. And in my view, I think everybody that walks the planet should have an SRT session, not just because I do it or practitioners of ours do it, or there's other people that perform SRT. So there's lots of other practitioners that don't use our protocol, that use other protocols that do it. But effectively, we're spiritual beings, and I think most of us probably agree now, and I'm pretty sure science probably agrees that we are actually just not this physical body. We actually do have this spiritual intelligence that is inside us. And if that's the case, if we're not sovereign and we're not our own energy, then of course we're being affected in a negative way by other spiritual things. So an SRT session effectively is bringing back a person into that sovereign state where they are just their own energy. They don't have things whispering negative thoughts in their ear, encouraging them to do negative things, bringing their energy down. And we all know that when we become anxious and depressed and tired and fatigued, then disease will manifest. So lots of diseases are expressions of our spiritual health effectively. So whilst obviously we've got nutrition, if we don't eat the right things, then we become ill, we become tired, we become diseased. If we don't drink the right things, we have the same problem. So the spiritual aspect must be the same. There must be a case of that we need to get spiritual clarity and sovereignty to be healthy. And, you know, myself and Johnny really, obviously after Terry left, passed over, which was a bit kind of, well, it was very quick, I guess. It wasn't really expected. He had COVID and that kind of thing. But obviously, we wanted to make sure that the research and work he did with myself and Chen, like 10 years of it, just didn't die, because it is critical research. And, you know, Terry's written a book called The Science of Spirit Possession. And his goal was always that book was going to be used by psychiatrists and people in the spiritual and mental health professions to understand how spiritual problems affect people generally, mental health, they affect their, and of course physical problems as well. If you've got entities attached to you, you'll have physical problems as well as mental health problems. So picking up the kind of, the kind of flaming sword, I guess, to a certain degree, was what SRA was all about. And it was John that came up with the logo, which was the Excalibur sword and the angel wings for protection, which actually is quite good because it's kind of how we see ourselves, and we're looking to get SRA to a place whereby we're engaging with lots of mental health charities, to veterans, to Help for Heroes, soldiers that are coming back from battles and war zones are 100% going to have attachments. There won't be one soldier that walks back from a battlefield or a war zone that doesn't have something connected to their field, and generally negative. And the big problem from that perspective, and the thing I'm quite passionate about, is it affects the family. So the children of that soldier, the wife, the parents, all of the people in the family unit are going to be affected, because that guy is, or lady, if she's a female soldier, is going to bring back something from a war zone that's negative. And of course, we've recently done lots of clearings for people that have been cursed in war zones. So we've got a very good friend that we know, and her son is in an active war zone. And we're clearing him on a regular basis, and quite often I'm finding lots of curses with him. And I hadn't thought about it really, but obviously it's obvious that the locals are cursing the soldiers because they're on their soil. There's war happening, even if they're there in a protective capability, they're still being cursed. They've still got negativity. There's still entities there that are feeding on negative vibration. And if you're in an active war zone and people are dying, people generally die in pain. And if we're human, yeah. So if we die in pain, we're going to be fearful, going to have adrenaline, vibration's going to be low. Comes back to the question that kind of Erin talked about before, is the fact that obviously going to attract entities. So war zones and battlefields are going to be full to the brim of negative entities that are effectively connecting and feasting on those military people that are there. So clearing soldiers should be a thing that we do. When our soldiers or any soldiers come back from a war zone, there should be spiritual people that are clearing them as part of their reincorporation to the family life. Because otherwise you're just basically creating this massive problem that these soldiers are going to have huge mental health problems. Lots of them are suicidal, lots of them commit suicide, lots of them can't deal with the things that they've seen and the things that they've done. So not only is there the kind of mental aspects, you've also got these entities that are going to be connected to those soldiers that are coming back home, that are feeding from them. The vibration's low. They're in a very, very angry state, or being in a very, very rage-based angry state because they've been fighting for their life. So, the whole veterans thing and the whole Help for Heroes and soldier thing, we're quite passionate about from an SRA perspective, to start to connect with some of these guys that are coming back from active war zones and helping them and clearing them and seeing how they feel and doing some research so that we can put together a proper research package and say, look, we've worked with 50 guys that have come back from different countries, different SRT practitioners, so not just myself or Jono or other people in SRA are keen to work from a research perspective to see and show that what we do actually has a massive impact on these guys that come back from war zones. But of course we can extrapolate this out to basically prisoners coming out of prisons, people that have done negative things. So again, the actual SRT practice, I think personally, is going to kind of end up growing to just be, if we sort of fast forward 50 years from today, which obviously I won't be here, so I'll be 105, so I'll be well gone by then, still talking to my kids probably, telling them all the things they still haven't done or didn't do, or just generally getting on the nerves if I can, because it's kind of payback at that point. But in 50 years' time, I think the SRT practice and the way that we do things will actually be normal in lots of different environments. I think the mental health areas, there'll be spiritual SRT practitioners that clear people. I think prisoners in prisons will be being cleared on a daily basis to keep them in a less angry state. I think veterans and war-based military personnel coming back from war zones will be cleared by practitioners. I think people that are having anaesthetics in hospitals, and lots of hospitals are full to the brim of discarnate spirits and entities, because so many people die every day in hospitals. not all of the energy and the conscious energy from those discarnate spirits is going to kind of go to the light. Some of them become earthbound and stay, and they're going to be still in the operating theatre. So when you go in to have your operation, if you could see psychically, you might find that operating theatre is full of people that are dead, basically, that are kind of going to connect to your energy whilst you're under anaesthetic. And I know John will speak about this because he's obviously had a couple of operations recently with full anaesthetic, and both times he's had some attachments from the operations that obviously get cleared very quickly. But again, he's sort of living proof from a medium and a psychic perspective that operating theatres and hospitals are quite dangerous places to pick up spiritual intrusive issues that no one in the medical profession is dealing with and looking at. And this is why I think, if you look at where we're going to go from an SRA perspective, the kind of landscape is huge. And we're talking from a practitioner perspective. If you're considering to come in on a course with us and working with us and training in the way we train, every person in the world is your client, effectively, because we don't fight for clients. John and I have been doing this a long time, and we don't see each other as competition for each other, even though we do the same thing, because of course the whole planet is a client, and there's billions of people on the planet, so we don't need to be protective over our own clients. And sometimes if someone works with me, doesn't get the best result, or they don't feel they get the best results, or they want to try something different, I suggest go to Jono or go to another one of the SRA practitioners and try somebody else, because we're all working slightly differently. We've got different guides, we're seeing different things at different times. So again, it's a landscape that you need to kind of navigate yourself and be drawn to people to work with that you actually respect. And one of the things we're keen to do really is make sure that all of our practitioners are screened, which they are. So we're taking on people that have integrity, honesty, speak the truth. We want high vibrating, good people with integrity to do this work. And when we don't take, which is why we don't have an application process, or we have an application process, we don't have a buy it now process, because we don't want to work with and engage with people who don't feel in the right place in their life to be doing this work. This work isn't for everybody. It's for people that feel called and people that really, really want to do it. And they're the people that we want to connect with, and we want to connect with people that have integrity. And if you look at our practitioner based, I think I've said before, if I was hanging off a cliff and I needed someone to hold my hand at the top, any of our practitioners that we've trained, I'd be happy to be up there. But that would be it, really. There wouldn't be any other people that I would kind of put at the top of that cliff that I haven't met or don't know, because this is all about integrity. So I think Elaine's talking. Hi, Elaine. So Elaine's talking about nursing homes. So yeah, all of these things are affected. Everything's affected, basically, if you look at it. John and I set a company up before it wasn't a company per se, it was a website called Celestial Defense. So if you go to celestialdefense.com, that's a kind of a concept we came up with to actually protect corporations. So if companies are being cursed by other companies, or companies that have entities in them, or they're being attacked by entities, or companies that have discarnate spirits roaming about that need clearing. So again, if you work in an office, if that office isn't high vibrating, or it's in an old building next to a churchyard, it's negative, the people that run the company are negative, you're going to attract negative things in. So we've actually set up a kind of website where people can engage us to clear their companies and their corporations and protect them. And we've got a couple of regular clients that we work with to protect their businesses from that perspective. Because again, it's the same thing. So Elaine's right, like nursing homes, we could go through the list. Prisons, nursing homes, war, scenarios, corporations. Obviously, SRT works for people, SRT works for animals, although we don't really focus on animals. We do clear pets. So if you have a pet and you're having an SRT clearing, if you reach out to the practitioner and say, can you clear my dog or my horse or my gerbil? Energy is energy. So the guides can clear and protect that energy any which way. So effectively, at some point, we probably will have an offshoot to SRA that is kind of animal based, and we've got a certain practitioner in SRA that is very connected to animals, and she's probably going to spring that up at some point. So there's kind of no end to what we can do and how we can work. The biggest problem is lack of people, really. So we don't really have that many people to do the work. And of course, it's trying to get the word out to the clients that this is the work that we do, this is how we do it, and this is the effects that we have. And this is what we're trying to do. So from my perspective and Jono's, we're trying to sort of champion now, pushing the word out about SRA as a kind of entity. So as a company, as a corporate company, as a corporation that specializes in spiritual clearing using spirit release therapy, developed by obviously myself, Chen and Terry. So we're trying to push that out so that more and more people are aware of how SRA can work with people and help people's mental health and clear each other. So again, council officers, politicians, politics, banking, we could kind of cover all the sectors basically. Everything on the planet is energy based and everything can be cleared. So, certainly land, any old land that has, if someone's died in a certain spot on a piece of land and they've died in pain and they've got adrenaline going through their blood and they're screaming in pain, that energy will be imbued into that spot. So that tiny little spot that person was lying on is going to hold that negative vibration. And potentially, of course, it will attract negative events to that spot. And that's why we have certain places, on roads that have continual black spots. People continually die there, or there's accidents in these places, not just because they're blind spots or difficult parts of the road, but because the vibration, the energy is negative and it attracts more negativity. So again, we kind of need people to go and clear those spaces or think about clearing the land, connecting to the guides to clear the land. Okay, so Andrea's saying, I'm telling my guides to speed things up for me so I can join. Great, we'd love to see you, Andrea. So yeah, make it the guide's job. And I think that's kind of a nice way to end this session, really, because I'm aware that I've been rambling on for probably an hour and 11 minutes or something. But I think, we all have spirit guides. Their job is to kind of manage us, to look after us, to protect us, to work with us. So effectively, it's a case of working with our guides. So if you want to do anything, whether it's an SRT course with us or anything else, whatever you want to do, just put the thought out to the guides and say, look, I really want to do this. If it's positive and it's going to have a positive impact on your life and other people, the guides will basically jump into action. And as long as you continue to stay focused and keep giving them the same thing, this is what I want, this is what I want to do, we need to manifest the money, we need to manifest the energy to do this thing, it will come. And you'll be surprised at the number of people that have turned up at our courses. In fact, one person springs to mind, that the last course we did, she arrived at 9 o'clock in the morning from America on the morning we started. So she literally flew in from the States and the taxi arrived at 9 a.m. and we were starting at like 9 a.m. And she walked through the door and said, I was called to do this. I'm here, basically. And, she'd found a way to come. And, I took my hat off to her at the time. I thought, wow, that's kind of dedication. But also, that's the guides working. If you're supposed to be somewhere and you're supposed to do the work, they're going to find a way. If you want to do it, they will manifest it for you. So my kind of last conversations, let's get manifesting. Let's all start manifesting positive things in our own lives and positive things for the planet and for the kind of, the evolvement of our species, really, because that's what we need to do, is just think things positively and we'll manage and bring that energy in and it will be positive. So I'm going to say goodbye. I think Dan has just appeared, who was talking about. I can see Elise is on here as well. So it's great to see you guys. You probably will tell me that I've been rambling for at least an hour and 11 minutes. I know. Hopefully I've covered some interesting conversations and given you a bit more info into what we do, why we do things, how we do things. And I'll catch you all again soon. So I'll say, okay, bye from me.